We will hear from some youth representatives and get their perspective on why this work, your work, is critical. Let me now welcome the Bashibus crew from Children's First to present an item. Directly following the Bashibus crew, Mr. Jermaine Williams, a beneficiary from Rise Life Management Services, will give us a testimonial. Please make them welcome.
Incest, poverty and neglect,
the voice of the youth, yeah, voice of the youth.
I'm only 15. My mother died. She left me. Molested and abused. I was just a baby. I am afraid. Alone. Burdens I carry. This pain. My father's baby.
Abused by my peers, so me turn to drugs. Now it's all about violence. Cause I'm a thug.
Selling my body and doing pornography is the way I use just to earn the money. Tuition for pay, yeah. So understand my situation. Fighting alone against society rejection.
And my own from my parents birthed me. No mommy, no daddy. Everybody gone left me. Nobody love me. Out of garbage me eat. I live on the street. Everybody pass and scan. And it's them teeth.
Oppression.
Depression.
Corruption, society rejection.
We need some discretion for a better progression.
Cause neglect. Just a broke with neck.
Young people, you're still here after so many days? No, man. You guys need hope. You need to believe in yourselves. Your voices must be heard. I must call to action the stakeholders. Stakeholders!
God, me a write you a letter. Just feel some herb from me nerve, cause me can't take the pressure. Nika gone pan the hustling, she can't do no better.
No.
10 time pan her back and a stranger pan tap on the man, them a beat her off for her spot. Father, tell me what is that? Oh, I will be young.
Pleasant afternoon. I am David Mueller from Talk of Youth Radio. The radio that gives youth a voice. Talk of Youth. And we have been here with these young people who have been here at Gordon House for the past week, trying to voice their issues with nobody listening to them. But today, the stakeholders are here, and we would like to thank them for their support. But stakeholders and young people, we need to work these issues out. Let us talk.
Unemployment.
Opportunity. Corruption.
Integrity.
Violence. Security.
Neglect.
Support.
Vulnerable.
Empowerment. Disability.
Inclusion.
Change.
Progress.
Come on, stakeholders and young people. We need to take responsibility for our actions. Who is to be blamed?
You.
Who?
Uno.
Them.
Come on, let us cut this because it is going nowhere. All stakeholders and all young people must come together to work on the issues at hand and unite.
Unite.
Yes, unite. The solution is unity. Don't you agree? Don't you agree?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. We need unity.
Most definitely. We need to come together and we need to partner to make Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. Young people and stakeholders coming together in unity.
Together we can work and build this land.
Together. Together.
I'm talking to you, young man and big woman. Come, let us find hands and help me sing this song. Togetherness to make progress. Togetherness to make progress. Togetherness to make progress. Togetherness to make progress.
Action time with the empowerment. Share in a this one come me government. Clarity.
Sustainability.
Let us partner together, build a better country. Togetherness to make progress. Togetherness to make progress. Togetherness to make progress. Togetherness to make progress. Together, yeah, together, yeah, together, 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 to make progress.
Young people and stakeholders coming together, uniting to make a difference in Jamaica.
At last. For too long we've been prescribing and describing for young people. And look, what a difference.
What a difference!
Youth are the future.
Yes, they are.
Remember, we are not only the future, we are the now.
Definitely.
Well said. The young people of this country are not only our future, they are our now. And we must include them in the nation's development plan. I am David Mueller, signing out from Talk of Radio.
Togetherness to make progress. Togetherness to make progress. Togetherness to make progress. Togetherness
Forever.
to make progress.
Together.
Togetherness
Forever.
to make progress.
Together.
Togetherness
Forever.
to make progress. Togetherness.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we give a bigger round of applause for the Bashi Bus crew from Children First? What a wonderful presentation with a very potent message and so in line with what we're doing today.
My name is Jermaine Williams, and I'm from Rise Life Management Services, and I'm from the community of Fletcher's Land. I'm here to give a small testimonial about what Rise Life Management has done for me, and so in order for me to help others. First, I would like to start off by saying that it was the year 2004 when I first came in contact with Rise Life Management Services. At the time, I had lost my place at a high school that I was attending. And at that time, Rise Life Management Services came to the offices of that school, the principal, to launch a program by the name of SIMBA at that time. SIMBA means Stimulating Young Minds to Become Achievers. At the time of that SIMBA project, I was there in the principal office, and the principal were telling Sean McGregor and Nejita Brown, who were the project manager at Rise at the time, about my situation and what can Rise do for me. Now, at the same time, the principal himself told Rise Life Management that they should never let me be a part of their program because I would mash it up and I can do nothing good. Now, Nejita Brown and Sean McGregor turned to the principal and said that really and truly it's persons like this that Rise would like to work with. So after 2004, my involvement with Rise, after just leaving high school, I immediately became a teacher's assistant with no subject or anything. Whereas assisting a teacher in remedial programs in my community every evening from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And on Thursdays, I was given a responsibility to host a life skill class. Life skills lesson can vary from anything from personal hygiene to personal development. I was given that task with about 50 kids every Thursday at my community center. Now, after that at my community center, everything with Rise. Rise launched our next program where I was then directly involved in the prisons now. We are going to juvenile centers like Metcalf Street Remand Centers and the Ray Corber Remand Centers, where I now do life skills lesson with the remandees at those institutions. At the institutions and everything, every week we're going with different topics. But with my lifestyle and where I'm coming from, because what I want everyone to understand is where I'm from, the hardest thing is to try to be good. That is the hardest thing. It's much easier to be bad than be good where I'm from. I'm being honest with you guys right now. So, pressure that I face in my community with this Rise thing that I'm doing, it's not normal, but what really pushed me and keep me going is the impact that I see I have made on a whole lot of persons' life, not just my life, where I'm coming from. I see where persons now look up to me towards certain things and a whole lot of stuff. So, at all times, I have to try to keep my head steady and keep myself focused because at no time I don't want to let down Rise Life Management Services because it's been 10 long years now. And through Rise, I have also gained an experience where I went overseas to work on a camp in California, a camp by the name of Pathfinders Ranch, a summer camp, boys and girls summer camp where I was voted the best camp counselor during my 8 weeks there. During my 8 weeks there, I was voted the best camp counselor. Every single week on that camp, I had responsibility for 25 kids. 25 kids who, my culture and their culture are two different cultures. At times when I thought no one understand what I'm saying, I had to try to break down at times and try to get an understanding. And eventually, my experience and my lifestyle and my culture, my Jamaican culture, I bring it over there and they love it very well. Every week it was cost and problem for the camp coordinator because everybody wanted to be in the Jamaican group. So the coordinator had problem with the camp and everything. But for me still, what I really want to say is my life without Rise Life Management Services would have been a devastating one right now. I'm telling you, I could be in prison or locked up because I'm from Western Kingston, one of the most devastated places that make it seem as if where it's easy for me to do anything wrong and I chose to be on a positive side. So that's why at times it hurts when I'm being judged by persons by based on how I might look or how I might carry myself or some way. But Rise Life Management has taught me that it's not about how you look or anything. It's what you do and doing what you love. And I've been with Rise for 10 long years now, and trust me, I love it very much. I can remember the first time with Rise, I was only getting $2,000 every fortnight. that couldn't do nothing, just finished high school. I remember Nejita Brown at Rise even got a job for me. And I turned down that job right from the interview because I had a love for this thing that I was doing, that I didn't mind the 2,000 that I was getting. I was just penetrating the change that I was making in my community with the kids in my life. And Rise Life Management has gave me that opportunity. And they not only see me as the problem, but they made me a part of the solution to the problem, which has made me very, very, very happy. So on behalf of Sonita Abrams and the whole Rise Life Management team, I just want to say thank you for rescuing and saving Jermaine, because if it wasn't for Rise, who knows where I will be today. Thank you.
I think it's just a brilliant idea that YUTE, Youth Upliftment Through Employment, has brought all these stakeholders to this table today. And we're seeing that we have the opportunity to interact with our executive members from the International Youth Foundation. So there's lots that we can talk about, and so keep the conversation going over lunch, and when we get back from a little break, while you enjoy lunch, we're going to have the discussions about the problems and solutions which you identified earlier. So do enjoy your lunch.
To one degree or another. You know, there sometimes your goals are different, sometimes the very forms you have to fill out, the depth of the information that's required, you're not sure if you're satisfying the requirements. Then there's the competitive nature, so many people applying for the same grants. The donor pool is drying up. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add, but just about everything that you said applies. Okay. I'm Ann Astwood, and I'm with the Multicare Foundation, and our focus is on youth and community development, particularly inner city youth.
Okay. I saw another hand.
There needs to be closer collaboration between the grant agencies and civil society in terms of letting us know what grants are coming up, how to access them. I mean, we know the timing, at the moment, mostly it's advertised in the paper. An example, about a week ago, we got an email from JSIF advertising a summer camp. I mean, we're in the middle of July. And so I am assuming that they and the call had been extended. I'm assuming that it had been posted in the media, but we never saw it. You didn't see it. And so this was an email, and with a deadline in perhaps a week or so. And so yesterday was the deadline. So normally we go for that grant, but every year, I must say, it comes out really late. And then, so that's just an example of how things could be improved. There are some grant agencies that are really good. They have workshops that teach us how to write their proposals, and I think we need to see more of that. Some of the requirements for getting a grant are very, very stringent and very difficult, and some of the templates for proposal writing are very complicated, and so therefore there's an unfair advantage, because RISE has been around 24 years. We know how to do this, and so we are at unfair advantage. Some of the younger CBOs and NGOs coming up, I mean, it's really difficult for them to access funding. So how can there be more collaboration in terms of maybe a grant agency saying, okay, we are putting this out, but we would like to see 2 or 3 agencies working together, and we're going to help to facilitate it, because usually the onus is on us, the NGOs, to form these collaborative. But we're too busy trying to keep our doors open. We really need assistance with that kind of collaboration. We're willing, but we need assistance to do that.
Absolutely. You put me on the spot there, didn't you? Yes, and I must apologize for all of that. But unfortunately, most of these agencies, and the EU even more so, we have legal obligations to our
our member states, and so there are certain things that we have to include in terms of contracting. However, what we find is that when people look at the volume of the document, they are so intimidated, they don't open it at all. And there are certain, and Sonita knows very well now how to do it because we've been working with Rise Life for a while. And there are certain key issues that you have to look out for. And what we have learned over the years is that we need to have a number of information sessions to inform civil society.
Many times there is difficulty in establishing a track record for NGOs for doing work. You'll have agencies that will have done work with NGOs or civil society in the past, and then maybe they were not able to see the full impact of the program. And so then it's difficult. You say, all right, well, you can't work with civil society because sometimes it's harder to see where the impact of your money is. And as Colleen says, all of the funds that agencies, international agencies disperse, they're not our funds. They're funds that either come from donor countries or they come from global trust funds, and we have to then report very stringently on what has been accomplished. So I think that there's some capacity gaps that could be there, both in collecting information, collecting data, so that you as the NGOs can really show and prove the work that you're doing, because at the end of the day, we know that once it gets to the global level, all people want to see is what is your impact, it's changing from impact to results now. So what are your results? And I find that for many agencies, that can be a challenge. You know you're doing good work. You can see the work. You can see the results of your work in the lives that you have touched. But how do you translate those results in somebody's lives into something not even necessarily quantifiable, but something that you can represent, that you can translate to persons who are very, very far away, who are not aware of your local context, who don't have any idea the amount of work that you had to put in to get that result. So I think that's one of the challenges, and I'm really happy to hear that the European Union is doing something in terms of addressing that capacity gap, because many times addressing that capacity gap in the civil society is not really the priority of these global funds. Their priority is, well, poverty eradication or these other lofty goals, and sometimes I think that working with the agencies who are doing the work gets lost in that. I think that it might be useful for agencies to coordinate. As Sunita said, it's difficult because you're so busy trying to keep your doors open that, who has time to work with each other. But I think sometimes if there was a stronger voice for civil society, you would have better representation or more consideration with some of these agencies. It's very hard to hear one voice. I'm in an organization, I know the work that civil society is doing, but trying to represent that to other people or other agencies with global priorities and other persons that they have to report to, sometimes it's difficult. If there was some support or some way for agencies to kind of pool the information and show their results collectively, I think that would have a stronger voice with many of the agencies that have funding and have monies available to give for support. And so those would be my two recommendations. All right, better data collection and somehow greater collaboration and sharing of information. Yeah, monitoring and evaluation. We can't overestimate how important that is, because at the end of the day, we have to be able to demonstrate what is the impact, what are the results that we have achieved.
And frustrated. But I have good news for you, because at JN Foundation, our forms are not complicated at all. They are not complicated at all. You may have greater challenges with fitting into the themes that we want to work with, right? But the forms are not complicated at all. We basically focus on a lot rural, because so much is happening in Kingston. So we tend to be more rural to begin with. But we do offer assistance to persons and projects in Kingston. But we focus mainly on financial empowerment. We have a marvelous program out now, financial literacy, and we're going into schools and into some NGOs and aligning that program to even some of the grants we offer, because we find that there is definitely a gap there. So we focus on that. We also focus on art and culture. Now, maybe nobody else in this room is interested in a grant to do anything concerning arts and culture. But when you're talking about things like capacity building for youth, then if we had all the money that Mr. Gates and some other people have, it would not be sufficient, because that's where most people are focusing. We also focus a lot on health and research and so on. Again, maybe nobody is really into that too much. So we may have an issue fitting into, no, but yes, there are other people who are focusing on different things, and somebody has to cover these bases. So maybe that's where we really do have the problem. What people are looking for versus what the Jane Foundation is willing to sponsor.
About the level of funding sometimes that's out there per proposal, and wondering sometimes if the donor agency isn't asking for quite a lot to be delivered for the funds that are going to be coming. And as Anne just spoke about impact analysis, but a challenge with the NGOs, I find, is that it's not that NGOs, some of them, the more progressive ones, for the want of a better word, is not that they are not aware of a number of these things and that they would not want to have it in their organizations, but there is no funding provided for personnel to do this or to outsource it to get it done. So sometimes I find that there's a little bit of a chicken and egg situation with the NGOs. There's a lot that is required of the NGOs, and a lot is expected to be delivered by the NGO. But the NGO doesn't have the funding to be able to do this, because when you look on paper, a lot of the persons in the NGOs are highly qualified people. And certainly they have the capacity to know who it is that they would want to join forces with or to add as complement to their staffing. But that is not possible because the funding goes, a lot of it goes directly into the project that is to be done, and there is very little assigned for human resource or personnel. And so I think that that has always been a catch-22 situation for the NGO. And so you keep coming back to the situation of capacity building, capacity strengthening, or monitoring and evaluation and what needs to be done, and all the other added on things, which the NGO themselves have been promoting for many, many years, and is aware of a number of these things. But the challenge is, how do we get it in? How do we get the sustained, well, whether we call it voluntary personnel to come in with us, or to have the sustaining funding to have all these other areas that we need developed? Because I do believe that the NGOs see NGOs as a business, a strong, active business. It's just that it's not for profit. So we want these things. We want the capacity. We want, we know what there is needed on the ground, but how do we get it, and how do we persuade donor agencies that we are aware of this? So help us grow as a good, strong business, a good, strong, viable business, a good, strong, viable non-profit business, but a business nonetheless, to be able to deliver all of this. So, you know, coming back to my question is, the funds that are meted out per project, majority of it going to the projects, then how is it that the NGO is going to be able to put all the other things in that we are needing, requesting, and requiring? And the requirements continue to grow and continue to grow. The NGOs are more than willing to deliver, but how do you really help us to get there and to really be on our own as a good, strong, viable business? Yeah.
Right, we need some help with business development and sustainability. I also think, importantly for me, is that point made about staffing and how do you attract quality staff if you can't pay them. One of the things I've done is a fabulous succession planning. Fabulous on paper, fabulous. All these young people will take over the agency in a few years. And I dream of it, and I'm stepping back, and they're stepping forward, and they're stepping back as well. Because realistically, they are young people who have dreams and aspirations. And one of the young person said to me a few weeks ago, and I mean, she is the backbone of my organization. Miss, with all the love in the world, I no longer want to be you. Because I can't exist without money. And that's the reality. I mean, the administrative cost, it's 10%, it's no percent, it's taken back, that's very hard because, I mean, yeah, we know that ideally we would hope that government would give us a subvention. But in this fiscal space, it's not so possible. So, I mean, these are some of the struggles that we have. I mean, the need is there. What would Jamaica be like without NGOs? And that's, I mean, how valuable is our work? And whether or not collectively we put a value on what we do is really very important.
NGOs for so long, we have to put a succession plan in place. And it's proving very challenging because we are doing this work because of the love we have for what we do. There's a passion. But the reality of the young people coming up behind us, we have to earn a living too, but it's more demanding at the moment. So in order to put that plan in place, we do need the kind of outside assistance, right? And in how to change the focus of the people that work in NGOs, again, are usually bleeding hearts. We're social workers, we're therapists, we're not business people. And so we need to change that culture. And I think in order to change that culture and become more operational as a social enterprise, we definitely need everybody, the staff to be retrained, you know, our board members, maybe we need to attract a different type of board member that can really help us to put that in. So we really need that assistance to move from where we are now, that we're so dependent on outside funding, to become more self-sustaining. And thank you.
Quality education, is it? So what are the real challenges with regards to youth development and the issue of education, as well as the issue of training? I'm okay with the silence because I noted that in the first section, You know,
I don't know what the experience is of a number of the other organizations here, but the 3 cohorts of participants that we took into the youth program over 3 years, and we had them put through literacy and numeracy assessments by JFLL at the front end of the program. And consistently across those 3 cohorts, better than 60% required some level of remedial literacy and numeracy training, which of course complicated our lives as an employability program, because there's not really anywhere you can go with employability with someone who is not functionally literate or numerate. One of the things, you know, I don't know to what extent as youth-serving organizations we can affect some of those outcomes on the ground. But one of the things that I believe very strongly is that youth needs to have as a part of its mandate advocacy on behalf of Jamaica's youth, insofar as the educational opportunities and the quality of the outcomes that are being offered to them. Because truthfully, you know, if 60% of those individuals did not in fact require literacy and numeracy, our lives would be a hell of a lot easier. We'd be dealing with the soft skills, we'd be dealing with vocational training, mentorship, placement, or entrepreneurial training. It's an outcrop of that failure in the education system that is forcing us not only to address those issues, but have to address basic issues like literacy and numeracy. And that to me is a big problem, and I think, you know, all of us need to be involved in speaking out on that subject and being advocates for some level of change. And it's not as if it's a change that's not recognized. I mean, Bill and Peter and Alicia and myself met with the Minister of Education yesterday, and that was the first issue that he put on top of the table, was his concern about effectively the extent to which the educational system is failing a very large swath of our education system cohort. So, I think advocacy is very important, and how we might be able to organize amongst ourselves in order to advocate, as a group. I do believe, certainly when it comes to advocacy, that we have a much stronger voice if we have a united voice. And that is something that I think that we could think about exploring as a group in terms of partnership.
And we target at-risk youth. Now, in terms of our own experience, you're correct. We have what is called a pre-vocational program. And it's quite amazing, and it shocked me to know that you had young men at age 25 and 30 who are barely literate. Now, the effect of that is it impacts on family life. And then when their kids come home, they're unable to help them with the homework. And then it also impacts in the way they relate to their spouse. So you see that domino effect that continues. Now, one of the things with our project, it's a project, it will come to an end. And you say to other agencies that do have mandate for training like HEART, that there has to be a change in strategy if we're going to solve the problem. And I think as we go forward for any agency, there has to be changes in the way we do things. So for example, a lot of persons had no faith in the HEART program because they said that I signed up, miss, and it took me 10 years even to get a call sometimes. And I think that has to change. Sometimes because persons were unable to pass the entrance exam, then they did not get a call. But I think HEART is doing some changes in that they're now having a pre-vocational program. One of the things that we also do in terms of sustainability is that we give scholarships. So the scholarship recipients, they volunteer in the community to provide assistance in terms of homework for other persons there. Our thing is that we're very big on partnership. And if we're going to solve the problem, it has to be partnership. But from my own experience, and we all sit here, over the 10 years I've been on the project, my greatest challenge has been the lack of coordination. I'm being very honest. You do come to forums like this over and over, and everyone telling you what they're doing. But the lack of coordination is key. Coordination helps it helps for better spending of resources. And it allows you to utilize resources, and it also prevents double dipping. Now, when you have 10 agencies working in a community, and persons know that the agencies are not coordinated, then one person benefits from all the 10 agencies working in the community. And you have persons hopping from one agency to the next. So I'm really here saying that if we're in 50 communities, and it's not about turfism. I tell persons, a number of agencies want to count the numbers. I say to them, we're improving lives. It's also not about the quantity of what we do, but the quality of the impact. And without that coordination, there can be no quality. So I say to us here that we all know the issues. And education and training, I won't even bother to go into all of what we know. I'm just crying out that I hope after this meeting, there can be greater coordination, because really that's where it is at. Coordination among civil society, coordination among government agencies, coordination among private sector. We have to see this as a team and a partnership, and not just a one-man show about turfism. Thank you.
And the recommendation was so as not to duplicate efforts, so that we could all work together, that we would go into specified communities and the NGOs that were strong in whatever. We were doing addiction services at the time, we would go in addictions. YOU was doing mentoring, Children First was doing vocational skills training, and we put that on the table and we were told, yes, it's a really good idea, that's what we're going to do. But then it never happened. Why? Because they had to put out a call, and whoever wrote the best proposal for the least amount of money got it, and it just never worked. And it didn't matter how loud we spoke out and we cried, it was to no avail. So, I don't know. So that was on the CSJP. And even today, we are still, you know, we don't know what's going on with CSJP. We hear there's a new phase starting, but nobody can give us any information, right? So talking about collaboration, it has to start from up there, so. All right, hold on. I want to just go back to, I think, in terms of education and how to deal with it. We were fortunate on the CSJP that we were able to do an after-school program for the young people who are failing in school. So we prepared them, so we were in 6 communities, and we would select from schools, the churches, etc., the children that were not doing well. We put them into a pre-GSAT program. So because, you know, in Jamaica, you have to take this exam, which sends you to high school. And from right there, the children are splintered. If you go into a traditional school, your chances of making it and getting a good education is much better. A non-traditional. So what was involved in that was 3 days of educational work, 1 day of life skills training, or rather 4 days and 1. And we would feed them, so it's not a cheap program, but it was the most effective program that we have ever done. And we were fortunate that we were able to get, to win a grant on the CSJP for 8 consecutive years. So somebody like a Jermaine, I mean the 250 adults that we have now who work like a Jermaine in all our communities came through our ranks, and they're part of the Rice family. So in order to have a serious impact, it must be long-term, it must be comprehensive, and the only way you can do that is that if you know that the funding source is going to be on a regular and a consistent basis. So I think with the Ministry of Education, the minister should, I believe, that ministry should understand that NGOs can provide a service cheaper than they can, more effectively, right? And therefore, they should give us a subvention to do this kind of work. They're not able to do it, then give us, those of us that work in the communities, a subvention so that we and the children, they're nurtured when they come into our centers. We have child-friendly areas, and then we have people like Jermaine that come in and support them from their communities, you know, their other needs. So it makes sense. So I believe that, I don't care how, you know, let's say that ministries don't have the money, but they do find the money to do what they need to do. So the only way is to get these subventions, I believe, or projects under the ministry.
And so on, is that before too long, they will be putting out calls for proposals for the implementation of certain elements of the program. Is that so or not?
overcoming some of the difficulties that we all have in approaching those tender responses individually with the best experience and know-how in that particular area.
justice component is not strictly justice in a formal court. It's looking at at-risk youths that are incarcerated because their parents can't deal with them. So, I mean, CSJP3 seeks solutions around crime. Is there another way to deal with it and address it? But one of the areas for what to do with the youth once they've been rehabilitated. And there are 3 levels of beneficiary identified, from the low-level at-risk youth that anywhere else before you can start having any kind of employment possibilities, up to a child that might have grade 9 and could go into sort of a 1-year program at VOC and then be able to transition into that level. In terms of the question around education difficulties, I really think, I was just telling Colleen that I offered to tutor my helper's daughter because she's going into grade 6 for GSATs, and I was told she was 4th in her class. And so she came over to my house last Saturday and I did a little assessment of her. First of all, she had never touched a computer. What is a teenage child in this society going to listen to? I've gone to consultations about the education system, and my impression was that there were computers in all the schools. So English and math was exceedingly low, and she's 4th in her class, which means that how many kids in her school are really going to pass the GSAT? She wants to go to Arden. It's, a big leap. So for me, that's really the crux of the problem for education.
Especially in rural schools, a lot of schools are equipped and they're monuments in the institutions. So it's another area.
I'm happy you alluded to the use of computer skills, using the computer, and in 6 months they moved up 2 grade level. They are happy, they are involved in this program, they are learning a difference. It's also being gender sensitive about how boys learn and what they want to learn. And I think that is making a major, major difference in the lives of
is after 5, we assist, and then the parents must find a portion of the fees. Now, after 5 years, the child is told the parents never paid the fees. You can't get your exam results and you can't graduate. And they never know what subjects they have passed. And then somebody says, oh, you can access this on the net. It is not accepted by institutions or organizations. So the children are sitting at home, not knowing what they have achieved, and they can't move further. What has been happening is that those very same children go back to heart, sit the entrance test, and try to find a skill when they could have gone on to other things. So we're really, and I could ditto everything that everybody say here, because although we're at Grace, we have funding issues because our staff can only afford so much. Right now, we are making appeal to staff to say, because our money comes from staff, and the company matches it 2 to 1. And our directors do make large contributions, and it is matched. But even with that, with the cost of education as it is, we have to be seeking funding too. So we are now on the market, like everybody else, trying to compete. But I think we need to really seriously look at that end product after 5 years. What is it the children should do? How can we overcome that major issue of the parents not having the money to pay for the rest of the school fees?
One was a collaboration, and to expand it not just from NGOs and donor agencies, but private public, because there's scope for an NYS, for example, working with these NGOs here in terms of executing certain programs with youth also. That's one. 2, about advocacy for education. Now, most of us here work with youth who are the products of the education system. And when they come to us, we have difficulties in working with them. NYS works with youth 17 to 24. So by the time they get to us, we we would hope that they would have come differently. So in terms of the advocacy, one of the quick points I want to make in terms of an example, in terms of using learning styles or to teach towards learning styles, which everybody as teachers understand, but to get that incorporated large scale in the system has been a problem. World Cup has just been finished. And there's a case of a boy who doesn't want to go to classes but love to play football. All him does is play football. Him don't want to learn nothing. But then if you take a football field, there's the math of it. What's the length and the width? What's the angle you kick a ball from the corner flag to get into the goal? And you get to history, boring. Who won World Cup in 1930? You get him to go back and do research for those things. So it's not very difficult. And I talk about it because as a man, I'm worried the gender aspect of things with boys, and boys are being lost. We have to understand how boys learn and try to understand what they're interested in and teach to that learning style. So the advocacy by all of us for that is something that I'd support 100%.
And if, there has to be some affecting them as well. And we have spoken about the parents, where we normally know about the parents. They are number one in all areas. But as you think of youth, you have to look at all the other areas, all the other interlocking areas. Now, I'm not saying as a youth organization we can go take everything on, but we do have to be mindful of the impact of all these other areas that come in. So whatever it is that you're doing when they get back into their regular situation, what is happening there? So something has to be done to cauterize that. Again, this can be where mentoring comes in, because there's mentoring for teachers. There is, as well as capacity strengthening in a number of areas. We, in fact, I was just saying to Anne that Youth Opportunities Unlimited, the areas that we are branched off into mentoring, when I went to the International Mentoring Association about 4 or 5 years ago, they were just starting to talk about some things that we have been practicing here in Jamaica for 6 years beforehand. So when you look at that whole aspect of developing with the parents and support and mentoring and all of that, the mentoring can go in so many areas and crevices. It's like oil. But so I just want us to be mindful of that, the other things that are impacting our young people. If we're talking about education, there's somebody that's teaching them. How are they being taught? How are they being loved? What it is that they are receiving to then have the product that we are having. So how do we help to cauterize that? Again, I'm not saying that we take all of this on, but there has to be other areas. So as we speak with the Minister of Education, and we are looking at all of that, how can we help him to be supported, or what else needs to be put in place so that the young people are really getting an enriched education and enriched life. Another area of support, I believe also, as we are looking for solutions, and we're looking at the impact of the nation, I think that there needs to be something needs to be developed in the nation where we are all focused and seeing the good that has been happening to strengthen the mindset of the nation's people. There is a mindset in our nation when we all, and there's this sense that this is happening here, there's this sense of disjointedness at times. And we're seeing what is happening in our place. And maybe we'll know a little bit more about our neighbor, etc. But if we got the strength of that impact together to understand the goodness, I don't know how we can do it, but it is something I've been crying out for a long time. That sense of advocacy and that sense of what it is that's happening, that sense that says, my people, this is where we are, this is where we're going, this is who we are. There has to be all of that coming together somehow. Sung out, spelled out, seen. And it can be done. We have seen it happen in nations when they want to change the mindset of the entire nation. I think this is something that we need to look at. And we should not take it lightly. All of us that are running organization knows what marketing is. We know what PR is. We know that we have to sell our products and so on. I think youth development, looking after our young people, the mindset and everything, it has to be seen almost in the same light.
What you've said isn't new. because those of us who work locally and globally, we're confronting many of the same challenges that you are. And I know that's at once frustrating because you probably could have said most of these things 10 and 15 years ago. But it only reinforces that we are right. We know how young men and women learn or should learn. And if they don't learn, our societies simply aren't going to prosper. I resonate very much with you and your boys' awareness and how they might learn their math. The accountants in my finance department are always upset when I find an error in their numbers, or I can go to an extrapolation quickly, and it's because I learned to do baseball batting averages in my head when I was 8 and 10 years old, and it has stuck with me. So it's these are very real experiences. Kamisha and Jermaine, and then the actors and actresses that were with us, I thank you for just how you've run this meeting, how you've inspired us. I'm here because of friendship with this man and solidarity with all of you, and that solidarity comes from a common mission, because what IYF tries to do across a network of youth serving not just civil society foundations, but governmental agencies and business groups who all, at least the ones we work with, do care, and they should care about the quality of the youth coming out of our programs, because without good quality, the businesses and the employees and the consumers and the politicians and the neighbors and all the people that we want out of strong adults aren't going to be what they can be. And we need healthy adults, we need good parents, we need good neighbors, we need citizens who demand of their politicians a clean and efficient administration. We want our government to be run by those types of people too. What we all will gain from young people progressing and reaching their potential. I resonate very much with what Joe is saying about advocacy. A couple of years ago, our foundation, in the spirit of supporting a global network of youth-serving organizations like you, we published with the Microsoft Corporation a publication called Opportunity for Action, preparing, and the title of the essay is Opportunity for Action, Preparing Young People for 21st Century Livelihoods. And all those words are important. There is an opportunity here, and we need action. And we must prepare people for livelihoods, but those livelihoods must be 21st century livelihoods, as Kelly and others have said around the table. If we're not teaching numeracy, literacy, and basic computer literacy, we're training people in for 19th or 20th century jobs and not 21st century jobs. At the end of that paper, and it's on our webpage, and I must say, we were asked to write this and launch it on a day in which what we call our Secretary of Education, which is your Minister of Education, Arnie Duncan, was holding a major conference on 21st century American jobs. And Microsoft and we decided we wanted to come out and say, you're right, Mr. Secretary, but 21st century jobs in America, it's all about 21st century jobs for the world, and this is a global phenomenon, and no one country will solve their 21st century job problems and employment problems without actually helping to solve it for the world, because we are in it together. We're trading and selling and migrating and moving money and jobs and production all around the world, and we frankly need economic growth everywhere. But the actions then that this paper calls for are actually precisely the types of actions you all are talking about directly and implicitly. It's bringing together in partnership for sustainable, longer-term actions. Governments, civil society organizations, businesses, youth themselves, not just as beneficiaries, but joining in the dialogue, joining in the design of programs, looking at young people as assets, and what do you do with your assets? You deploy them. Young people are protagonists, we believe, and I think all of you too believe too. They are protagonists in their development as well as our community's development, and if we only look at them as beneficiaries, we're missing half of the action. The actions, though, not just of bringing together these three for-profit, nonprofit, governmental sectors and getting the best out of all of us working in harmony and together, but we have to look at policies that enable that, and that means government, but government being led too by advocates to do the right things, scale, and sustainability. Well, these are actually parts of our modus operandi at IYF. I was asked today on Smile Jamaica, would we be opening an office or an operation in Jamaica? And I said, no, sir, we're working here with Jamaican organizations. And in Joe's solidarity with all of you in his opening comments, that goes to all of you, not just to YUTE. As I said, we're here out of friendship, but also solidarity and a common mission. So we believe in bottom-up solutions. These are local solutions that you're talking about, but it's really a set of global challenges. We envision, because we've been hearing it from you, we're not here to solve your problems, we're here to listen to your challenges and figure out how we might bring some value added to what you're doing, because that is, again, our modus operandi, to help local institutions learn, grow, share what works, know what works, of course. You can only share it if you know it. And it's that monitoring and evaluation that Joe and others have referred to explicitly as well as implicitly. He couldn't have come up with the numbers of those beneficiaries if they hadn't been monitoring carefully their programs. And I think you all know that and know how to do that, but sometimes we don't have enough money to do it or enough time to do it. So if there is a YUTE 2.0 or something with a different name, but the idea is let's keep building and learning on what we're doing and broadening our partnerships, we would like to be part of that with you in ways that you would feel comfortable with and feel that we're adding some value. I think we can add some value from the learnings that we've done across this hemisphere and across the world. We work in 70 countries today. Each one different, but then again, each one similar to what you're talking about too. Whether those countries are richer than Jamaica or poorer than Jamaica, we are talking about societies that have more in common than what differentiate them. And frankly, young people, and we know this, you could be from the upper middle class of your country, and yet your child is one bad mistake away from being an at-risk youth as much as someone growing up in a slum. And I know that in living in a nice part of Washington, D.C. My kids can walk and buy drugs faster than they can buy a tube of toothpaste in Washington, D.C. It's everywhere. So they're not far from making mistakes that can ruin and affect their lives. One program that we developed about 13 or 14 years ago with the IDB, but since it has brought on some of the bilateral aid agencies and global companies and local companies and governments, is a program called Entra 21. And the logo of the program is the enter button on your computer, which in Spanish and Portuguese, and that's where most of the program developed, but there was a good piece of it in the English-speaking Caribbean. We wanted the logo to be Entra, which would be Spanish and Portuguese for enter. But it's the enter button on your computer, and Entra 21 means some basic literacy, numeracy, and computer skills to enter the 21st century job market, yes, and be successful at it. And the target population were what the Latinos would call the ninis, and we've learned in English later on to call it the NEETs, the young people who are neither in education, in employment, looking for a job, or in any type of training. That program started out to train 12,000 people with a rigorous metric being not did you enjoy the course, did you get a good grade, did you finish it, but did you get a job, yes or no, and a quality job, a decent job, not some sort of 20 hours a week and half a minimum salary. That wouldn't count as a job. If it was in the informal sector, but someone was working 30 plus hours and making at least a minimum salary, then we would count it as having achieved a job, but we weren't going to count underemployed people as employed. That program was so successful. In fact, we were charged to train 12,000, we trained 20,000 because of the leverage we brought in from public and private donors. 55% got jobs after the bank said, we hope you can employ 40% of them. And I thought 40% was low. And they said, well, low, it's higher than the governments are getting right now with their governmental programs. Well, 55% of our young graduates got jobs within 6 months, and another 25% went back to school. Now, they were out of school and out of work. And if you're out of school and out of work, it doesn't seem to me like you're doing much for your future, your families, or anyone's. The second phase, we were to train 50,000, and we trained 110. And 2 years ago at the Cartagena Summit of the Americas, where your Prime Minister was at, and all the heads of state of the democratically elected countries in the Americas, we pledged 1 million people in a phase 3, which is called New Employment Opportunities for Youth. And why did we pledge it and do it at the Cartagena Summit? Because we wanted to show the heads of state that we're serious about doing it right and doing it in scale, and we count on them to be part of this, because ultimately the public sector is terribly important. NGOs and the business community can't alone solve these problems. We need and want to work with governments, and we all have something to contribute and all have something to gain. So we wanted to do it in front of, and make almost a political statement that we, and the we was Latin and Caribbean, nonprofits dedicated to youth, some very big businesses in the hemisphere, and the Inter-American Development Bank, saying we're going to work for the next 10 years to train 1 million ninis, with the notion, or the out-of-school, out-of-work youth, with the notion of hopefully training a couple million or more, but really setting the bar around policy making and proper investments from public and private so that we get to scale. It's not enough to be doing something because you're well-intentioned. We want to show that we really have the results, and with those results, can we really learn so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and things can be taken to another part of the hemisphere or another part of your country to go to scale. If it works in 10 schools, why can't it work in a school system? Why can't the next Minister of Education continue what the last Minister of Education did and not start history anew and afresh every time governments change, if what's working is working, and you can prove it? So what we would like to do is offer to you, and we've started Tuesday night at Joe's house with a stunning group of many of you civil society leaders, business leaders, and several ministers, and have met with, I guess, since we've arrived, with 4 of your ministers now, to talk about what would be your plans for an expansive next round in a public-private partnership. And then if you want us to be involved, and this is the way IYF works, we work for you. We don't come in with our solutions. This has been a very wonderful round table, or not round exactly, but good table discussion about how we might work together has given me a lot of good ideas. We're prepared to send Peter Shiras and some of our staff back down here to work with you in things that might help. And some of those things, just quickly, might be some intellectual property that we have developed over the last 10, 15 years around life skill building, how to integrate it into public school systems, into high schools, into second chance programs for your unattached kids. A 16-year-old who drops out at 3rd grade, you're not going to put them back into 4th grade with little 9-year-olds, but there has to be a second chance of some sort of academic learning, literacy experience where the young woman, young man can come out of that second chance program, the way the World Bank talks about it, with some skills to get a job. We have another curriculum called Build Your Business, which in some ways is complementary to Passport to Success, which is our life skill program. Build Your Business is kind of an entrepreneurship 101, and it would be for someone who's thinking about starting a business. But to me, I like to think that we want all of our kids. I want this as a parent, not just as the president of a youth serving foundation. I want all of our kids to be entrepreneurial. What does that mean to me anyway? It means someone who is ambitious, has some goals, is willing to work hard, is willing to take some risks, knows what they know and knows what they don't know, so they continue to learn when school is over. We're We all need to learn an awful lot after school is over, not just during school. I never touched a computer until I had graduated from the university. So what's a kid today if they don't learn how to use a computer in some fashion? We're not trying to turn them into geeks now, but if you don't have some computer literacy, you won't work in the 21st century in anything but very, very basic skills. And today's teenagers will work until 2060 if they're fortunate enough to get and keep a job. And just imagine, too, today's teenagers working until 2060, they're having kids already or will soon. Their kids will work until 2090. So if we want to have an impact on the 21st century in this world, today's teenagers are where you'd want to invest. And I like to say, I think I said something similar at Joe's house the other night, when we get it right and a teenager stays in school, becomes a healthy young adult, understands his and her citizenship responsibilities, and can get and keep a job or start a small business, that person becomes a productive citizen for the next 50 years. And we all gain from that because they're taxpayers, they're law-abiding citizens, they raise their kids well, so our communities become sustainable. And when we don't get it right for them, it's a drain on society in every possible way, economically, socially, politically, morally. So we would like to work with you in ways that would help you and help us, because what we like to do too is I think a major new public-private partnership in Jamaica would be a model for other countries. We work throughout the Caribbean. I've seen good, what works, and we like to call it what works, proven practice programs taken from the Philippines to Tanzania and from Brazil to Poland, and across a global network we can share these experiences, and I think you would have not only something to gain from looking at how others have tackled some similar programs, but I am convinced that Jamaica would have something to give from these experiences to other countries who need to learn the same thing, and that is how to get the most out of our young people for their sake, but for our sake, and then frankly for society's sake and our grandchildren's sake. So thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be with you. I'm inspired. Peter is too, from what we hear and see. And we're very interested in seeing how we might collaborate with you in meaningful ways. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean, was partnerships. And so many persons have spoken about it. And at the end of the day, by virtue of being at the stakeholders,
youngsters to go into the schools, pretty much like what the gentleman here was talking about. It's a group of 8 men, all of whom were dons in their community, some of whom served time in prison, but have now been reformed. They have reached over 35,000 youngsters in the school. Guidance counselors call upon them quite a lot to come and speak in the schools. So that's one of the things that we have learned, that, as you say, you have to use those who were once a part of the problem to now become a part of the solution. So that has worked for us. We partnered with the Jamaica Defense Force. We have an on-the-job training program. It was quite a novel intervention, getting the security forces to work with at-risk youth. At first, it was very challenging because the youngsters said we brought them to the enemy's camp, and the soldiers said that we brought the enemies to them. So it was very difficult at first working with both groups. But for any new intervention, one has to learn from the lessons learned in order to implement in going forward. We had 450 youngsters on that program, and it was well executed. And of the 450, 350 completed. The others only 10 persons were expelled from the program. Others were integrated into jobs. We must report that the 5 persons got through for the Army, 3 of whom are now in the Army serving as soldiers. 2 will be going on to training in September, and the Army employed 6 persons as civilians. In terms of other best practices, we coined a program which was called the Employment Internship Program. So often persons say, I do want a job, but they're not ready for the job market. So we have an employment internship program. This is where we partner with both public and private sector organizations. We provide a stipend for the youngsters, and we keep them up to 6 months in the organization with the hope that they're retained afterwards. To date, since this program has been around, 553 persons have obtained permanent employment, working across places like Scotiabank, Jamaica Stock Exchange, Passport, PICA, all over. One of the things we have learned and we have also put in place is what we call family engagement sessions. Now, we know if you're going to change the individual, it has to be an holistic approach. So we also have to engage the family. So what we do with the family engagement sessions, as you refer to life skills, that the spouse of the individual or a parent or father comes to life skills sessions, because we are aware that one of the things we also did in the past was we offered a stipend to the spouse in order to ensure that attendance, that the individuals were attending. So when the individual did not attend, that spouse got very upset because she said that you're making me lose my money by not going to to classes. So these are just some of the best practices that we have done. We have learned the importance of giving a stipend in our program. There are many persons that will talk about a stipend, but it's very important. The job market is such that the economy is bad as it is. And for many persons, this stipend that they obtain is really what supports them and their families. So we have learned that no matter how small it is, that a stipend is important. We must say that the JDF program has really been a resounding success, because out of that program, we had persons going on to JPS for internship. And most persons will tell you that they have learned punctuality and discipline out of that. So persons that we have a 0 tolerance policy on lateness. If you get to work at 8:01, you're late. You have to instill something in them. So a person will run all the way to the gate and it's 8:01, you are sent home. But he will come for the rest of the time early. So we have to, you see, change in attitude. And my last point is this, that for those of us in the development field, we know, and for some who don't know, that behavior change, it takes a while. And it is a process that will take years sometime. I may not see the change today, but it's something that will take place. I think too often when persons hear about CSJP, persons say, it's not a panacea, I tell persons. It's not the cure-all. So if a person comes to us and they have bad behavior or they are exhibiting some social defects, the program itself can't change them. But you do intervention that you would hope that the seeds you're sowing will do some work over time. But behavior change takes time. I don't think many persons know that, because when people hear about intervention, they go, but I thought he would change. You are trying to re-socialize a person over 20 years, 25 years of what they have been in. So those have just been some of our experiences on the ground as a program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes?
To treating with the problem of education or lack thereof. We not only work with supporting the students, but we work with the parents as well. So for the students who are a part of our program, who we support financially, the parents or guardians are also a part of the parent group, the accompanying parent group. And so it is mandatory that they participate in the process of educating their children. We found that this helps because it takes into consideration the fact that at the end of the day, at the end of leaving the homework centers, leaving school, they're going to go home to the parents. So the parents are in tune with what's happening, and we find that once there's buy-in there, that makes the process go a little easier. Again, this holistic approach has to take into consideration other factors. You go home to your community, or centers are operated in the communities where most of the students live. But at the same time, when the coordinators leave and everybody leaves, they are left in the community. So, you know, the influence is there. As Jermaine said earlier, it's difficult to be good. It's harder to be good than to be bad. So we have to also focus on we have to take into consideration all the different factors. Another thing that we have found to be a challenge to education is health. The health of not just the students, but the parents, but in particular the students. We have a lot of sick children because a lot of the children, yes, you know, at-risk youth are from all across social lines, but in particular for inner city children and for children in rural areas too, we find that their nutrition is a challenge, good nutrition. And so if you are not healthy, if you haven't eaten, you can't learn, and you really aren't motivated to learn either. So that is something, it's so many things, so it's difficult, obviously, to fund, but we have to take these things into consideration because we want a healthy youth population because, as Mr. Williams said, that that's the future population as well. So we also try to provide them with something nutritious at the end of the sessions for those who attend our homework sessions. Of course, you have to be smart. If you provide it before, they might not stay all the way to the end. You know, and Grace is a good food company, so it sort of makes a little bit, yes. Yes. So we try to feed them also. Another thing is job shadowing and mentoring. As Mrs. Mann mentioned earlier, Grace and Staff is funded by staff contributions, which is just such a tremendous effort, and really, we're very excited about the staff at Grace Kennedy that they actually see it fit to contribute monthly, and then the company matches that contribution. So in addition to that though, the staff also participate in mentorship and job shadowing, and we found that to be very effective. So you find that a lot of young people want to be doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, and they really don't have any idea what engineering, for instance, involves. So when you take a student who says, yes, I want to be an engineer, and that's what I'm going to be when I grow up, has no interest in the sciences necessarily, but will still try to pursue it because, I want to be an engineer or a doctor. But when you take the student to Canning, for instance, and they see what an engineer does, that he or she is down there on the line and is sweating, is wearing a hairnet, is not looking fabulous, have to take off all the jewelry and everything, then they think, oh boy, I don't know. This might not be what I want to do. And there's one story, one young man said, boy, but I'm not gonna get no girl because, this really not gonna take up too much time. So, we also have to expose them to, I think it was said earlier, we have to expose them to, what the reality of the work world is really like, so that they can make more informed choices about what it is they want to pursue once they have left school, and this will inform the subject areas that they want to do, and to show that you don't have to do the sciences, you can do the arts, you can do other subjects because the market is there. And finally, referrals. I find that in the development world and in the NGO world and so on, we're very territorial. And even in government, Ministry of Education, they have they're in charge of schools, and whether they're doing a good job or not teaching, they don't want to, you don't want people to trample on your ground. But at the same time, we can't do everything wherever we are. I know at Grace and Staff, boy, sometimes Mrs. Madden said, Ms. Madden, come go home because, we have new applicants, we can't take them on. And at the same time, they come with so much, additional baggage, and you want to help, but you can't help. So I've found it's very important to know, and this is why, gatherings, forum or forums such as this are good because you're exposed to what else is happening. So my suggestion is that we find what it is that we do best and sort of focus on that. And where we can't assist properly And we know that there are other agencies, government agencies, NGOs, etc., that we do referrals. Because at the end of the day, we're all working towards a common good. And we have our roles to play, and we should continue to do what we do best and refer to those who can do something else. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Noel Este, and I'm a manager at the International Youth Fellowship. That's another IYF. The IYF, our focus is to work on the mindset of young people. So the example we like to use is this. There is a story about this man who had a monkey. And he had the monkey from it was small. And when it got older, it started to get sick. And no matter what he did, he couldn't help it. And he took it to a vet. And when the vet looked at the monkey, there was a string around his neck from it was a baby. And as he was growing, it started to strangle him. And once he cut that string, then the monkey was well. So our focus is not to work on to not focus too much on how people behave. We try to focus on finding the difficulties inside of their hearts and setting them free. And what we found, because the IYF, like the other IYF, we're in over 80 countries. Each branch, though, is autonomous. We don't have funding. Everything that we've done in Jamaica, it's the members themselves. We have about 20 full-time volunteers, not so much, but about 20 full-time volunteers and about 100 part-time volunteers, including student volunteers, and we work together. Everything we've done was with our money, and all the work that we've done is by our hands. And the programs that we have done are basically this, to try and change the mindset of young people, because we found that the kind of mindset that young people have, the problems that they have across the world are basically three things. First one is this: I am too poor, it makes no sense. So when you go into communities and you start a program to teach people how to importance of school, because this young lady mentioned, we've had situations for example, right now we're doing some work in Southside, and some of the people down there are not badly off, but when they fall into the mentality of their environment, even when they go in school, what's the point? All right, I study, what's the point? At a certain point, go look at work. That's just the mentality. So we have to try and break that mentality. The other thing is, the second one is that if I die, who cares? Nobody cares. And those people become the most violent, because you live today and you die tomorrow. And I've heard stories, because one of the people told me that there's a group of guys, they didn't tell me who, just in case anybody hears from the police, robbed somewhere, and they were bathing in champagne. So they bought the most expensive champagne, poured it into a tub and sat in it. That makes no sense, but that's the mentality. Live today, die tomorrow. So that's the third and final thing is that this whole obsession with sex. So maybe some movie, some book, or something that they read made them think it's something fantastic, and we have to educate them. That's not true. So when we work with young people, our focus is to try and challenge the way they think and break them out of this current mentality, because the two words that you hear from young people the most these days is, "Me can't bother." That's not to a street. "Me can't bother," right? So we challenge them, and we have activities that are geared to bring them together. And to give an example, we don't, as a standard thing, provide meals. We tell them to come and bring some money. Sometimes they don't have any money. If we can't help them, we do. But we have one young lady, we're having a high school program now. She walks from Southside every day all the way up to Dina Road to our center with no money. And whether we give her food or not, she's coming the next day. And the reason why she comes is because she has a physical problem where her two knees are very close, and they tease her. They call her Special K. That's what her friends call her. But now she laughs when they say it, because she's learned that you don't have to be bound by your physical condition. So the problem with the educational system is that the educational system is trying to produce, almost like when we go to funding agencies, because we're trying to do this thing on a larger scale, and we're going to funding agencies, and they're businesses. Sorry to say, we are not a business. We are not trying to make money. We are trying to do the things that we do to help young people, but we are trying to do it on a grander scale, and it takes funding, so sometimes we need sponsors. But the people who are giving us money expect us to produce business-type results. We can't show you a center that we built. We can't. But all we can show you is that that person was like that and now they're like this. So best practice, this is what I'm supposed to be talking about, is that one of the things that we need to focus on, yes, we may focus on circumstantial improvement, we can focus on feeding programs, but if we don't change the mindset of the young people, then we're going to be here 5 years from now, we're going to be back again. There's a center on High Holborn Street that we are trying to get access to now. It was created by funding from an overseas agency, I don't know where, but it has been locked up and abandoned for 10 years. There's a dance floor up there that only people that dance there are pigeons. And the reason that was that shortly after, violence broke out and nobody goes there. The same people that we're trying to help will, for short-term gain, steal the toilet seat, steal the toilet bowl, just for short-term gain, if you don't teach them and change the way they think. So our focus is just that, working on changing the way young people think. It can work, it has worked. And I think if we add that to everything else that we do, then we can have a more sustainable program. Because providing somebody, I mean, women, there are lots of women here. And women, when women go to a mechanic to fix their car, you're not looking for just a mechanic with a nice shop. You're looking for a mechanic you can trust. So if that heart of that mechanic is not set in such a way that you can trust him, no matter how you train him, no matter how good his shop looks, if you can't trust him, that's it.
All right, thank you. That about young people in rural Jamaica. The majority of the programs that we hear for youth focus on urban youth, whether it is just in our urban centers or in inner city communities, but not enough is done to really look at rural youth. I can tell you the complexities of the problems in rural Jamaica, they're very different from what you see in many of the urban centers. And I can say that because I'm a country girl. I'm from St. Anne. One thing though is that I'm from the North Coast in St. Anne. I live in Civil Heights. But when you go to rural St. Anne, when you leave the coast, if you even look on the poverty map, on the coast, it's not so poor. But when you get into rural St. Anne, it's poor. And it's not just financially poor, but in terms of the opportunities for the young persons, that is also a challenge. So here's my bit of advocacy, that we also expand outside of Kingston and St. Catherine and St. Andrew and look at rural Jamaica. I know that the source is in Savannah Mar, but we really need more persons to take the efforts to rural Jamaica. I also want to encourage that in terms of education, we really encourage technical and vocational areas. It's so funny that everybody's talking about getting the CXCs and getting this subject and that subject, but I think it's even more important at this juncture to have skills qualifications, because that's something you can constantly build on, and that's a way of creating your own employment and creating employment for others. When I was asked to speak recently at a scholarship launch, the mindset was the most important story that I got from a joke. Now, Mr. Dwight Moore of Kia Motors, he, as a boy, was very precocious, and his father said, if Dwight wanted to do something, there was no stopping him. So his father told him, Dwight, when I leave, don't go through the gate. But his father never added the part, stay in the yard. So when he came home, he found Dwight outside the gate. And his father said, Dwight, I'm going to beat you. And Dwight looked at his father and said, no, Daddy, you told me not to go through the gate, and I didn't. I went over the gate. The point is, whatever is the vision we have for youth development, there will always be someone telling us that it cannot be done this way. But if we focus on where we want to get, chances are we're going to find a way with integrity and with the partnerships to get to where we want to be, to creating the Jamaica we want, to creating the world we want. And I'm sure that we all share the sentiment that the Jamaica we want is a place of choice. To live, work, raise families, and do business is not the place that those who stay are because they can't do better, but those who stay are choosing to stay We know many young people are migrating or really want to migrate from Jamaica. So we have to play our part in the partnership to truly create the Jamaica we want. So we've spoken about partnership, we've spoken about capacity building, we've spoken about advocacy, and so much more. So let's leave today and make it work for the youth of Jamaica. They're depending on us. So we've come to the close of an enriching session, and so I now invite Mr. Maurice Bryan and Byfield, thank you for the correction, and Ms. Danette Lawrence, beneficiaries of YUTE, to move the vote of thanks. Please make them welcome.
Okay, let's begin by saying good evening.
Good evening.
Okay.
Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Danette Lawrence, as you would have heard of before, and I'm pleased to be here to move the vote of thanks along with my fellow participants of YUTE, Maurice Byfield. Maurice and I are currently enrolled in the YUTE Bill 2 and the 18-month-long training program in general construction, which have been benefiting 100 young people like ourselves. We are seeking to empower ourselves through earning a skill to be able to work and support ourselves and our families. YUTE Bill 2 is implemented in collaboration with the National Housing Trust, HEART NTA, and the Jamaica Emergency Employment Program, JEEP. Maurice and I have a lot in common. We were both recognized as top male and female performers within the first segment of the program. And it was then that I realized we both hail from the same community of Parade Gardens.
No, big up Central Kingston, which is Parade Gardens.
Yes, we are proud to represent our community as young people who are not only making good use of the opportunity programs like YUTE offer, but we are striving, thriving, and succeeding.
I must say that it was very interesting to listen to your discussions. Today, some of what you had said was truly eye-opening. And as sometimes we, the beneficiaries, which is Danette and I, others, take this thing for granted, definitely. How much effort goes behind the scene, Ms. Glasspool, Kirk, all the other executive bodies, trust me. Let me first take a brief moment to thank Mr. Joseph Matalon.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Who is ever present, always supportive. Mr. Matalon, I, Maurice Byfield, thank you on behalf of the youth. Thank you. To our special guest, Mr. William B. Reese. Reese, sorry about that, I'm not so familiar with the name. And Mr. Peter Shiros. Yes, I got that one right. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules, both of you, for being here today. All right. Oh, come on, Danette. I'm getting a bit nervy here. Okay, sit with me. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come to Jamaica from Maryland. We know that you have already made an investment to the youth of Jamaica, and we hope you will continue to do this. Thank you.
Really hoping that you are actually enjoying your stay here in Jamaica, and I just want to implore you, do not leave without eating the ackee and saltfish. Really nice. This event would not have been possible without the support and contribution of all the representatives here today from our hard-working NGOs, corporate foundations, the government, the donors, and others. We thank you all for sharing. We are looking forward to hear more great things about the work you have been doing to uplift the youth of Jamaica, we certainly, as beneficiaries, commit to making you and ourselves proud. Ms. Kemisha Kelly, Master of Ceremonies, thank you for guiding us on this luncheon. You are indeed a great role model for young people, and we thank you for always giving back and for your contribution today.
We thank Mr. Jermaine Williams from Rise Life for his testimony. Mr. Jermaine. No. And the Bashi Bus crew from Children First for their educational yet entertaining presentation. I don't see them. There she is. We also extend gratitude to the youth team led by Ms. Glasgow for organizing this event and allowing us to be a part of it. We thank you all.
Again, thank you all so much for coming. Have a great afternoon and do walk good.
I should just remind you all that there are some brochures, pamphlets that are available, so please take them before you go.